Hello and welcome to Birth as We Know It. I am your podcast host, Kiona Nessenbaum. I have experienced birth as a doula, a student midwife, and as a mother of 3 amazing children with my husband and high school sweetheart by my side. After attending over 130 births, including my own, I've realized that each birth experience is truly unique. So make sure you subscribe and join me every week as we are guided through many different birth experiences through the lens of the storyteller. Please be aware that some of the stories can be triggering to hear, so feel free to pause, take a breath, and come back and listen whenever you're ready. With that said, let's prep ourselves to dive deep and get detailed about what really happens in the birth space. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and has no intention of giving or replacing any medical advice. All advice that is given on the podcast is from the personal experiences of the storytellers. All medical or health-related questions should be directed to your licensed provider. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Birth as We Know It podcast. Today, in this episode, we will be interviewing Blaine Bennett. And Blaine is an amazing human being. She is a parent of 5 beautiful children, as well as an herbalist, student midwife, doula, all the things. And she is also the owner of PNW Apothecary. I will go ahead and put her link in the show notes for this. But welcome, Blaine. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll start off by talking about a little bit about yourself. So tell us about yourself, who's in your family.
Awesome. So, yes, I'm Blaine. I have 5 kids. Their dad and I, we've been together for 13 years. Oh my gosh.
Ooh,
That's so
nice.
it's so crazy to think about. We have a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 8-month-old baby. So I kind of got like into birth work with my oldest daughter. I had her in a hospital and the experience wasn't super great. So I decided, maybe I should find another way to do this next time. So that kind of got me into birth work and into midwifery school, and that the midwifery, to like crunchy mom pipeline is kind of a slippery slope. So then I was like, oh, now I'm in midwifery school, I can start, like making birth herbs and things for my clients. Like I got really into herbs after taking 2 years of herbology in school. So I decided to kind of make a business out of it, so that way I didn't have to work while I was in midwifery school, and I could stay home, homeschool my kids, and kind of work from home.
That's awesome. And so are you still homeschooling your babes?
Oh yeah, yes.
Nice.
Yes. Everybody comes downstairs.
All 5
we have
of them.
A classroom. Yes. Everyone comes downstairs, even the baby, and does school together every day. Yeah, it's awesome. Everybody's kind of at different levels, so we have to make it work, but I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Thanks.
A true inspiration, I'm sure,
Thank
for a
you.
lot of our listeners, as well as myself. I know that when we first met, I was like, oh, you're doing homeschooling? Oh my God, maybe I can do that. I don't think I have the sanity for that, though.
Yeah.
So.
I have to admit, I'm kind of crazy. Like, I can't remember anything that doesn't have to do with my kids. Like, I'm very surprised. If I hadn't put this in my phone, I probably would have forgot. Like, I cannot, like, if it's not about my kids or school, like, I can't even think about it, honestly. It's crazy. But, yeah, so I'm kind of, I would say I'm crazy. My mom and my sisters will text me and call me 100 times. Like, did you see that I that I texted you? Like, you guys, we're doing school right now. I can't. So I kind of had to shift my mindset. Like, this is what's important, like my kids are only young once. They're only going to have this time to learn once, and if we're going to do it, we have to do it right. So, I can't really like be distracted by other things. We have to do it. So,
Right.
especially with
great.
like, how everything's going. I'm just like, I already have, anxiety about, I'm sure everybody has a little bit of anxiety about something, about like being away from my kids. And when I was in midwifery school, it got really bad, like being away from them for days at births. I would like get home and just be like, oh my God, like I miss them so much being away. And so I was like, maybe after I had the last baby, I was like, maybe I should put school on hold for a while, because I'm in my last year. It's going to start getting busy. I'm going to start being the primary midwife. So I'm going to be gone a lot. And I'm like, it's not fair to my kids right now while I'm doing school with them. Like their school hours would be off. Like I might be gone for a day or two. So I just decided put school on hold until everybody's a little bit older, especially the baby's a few years old, and kind of put time into their schooling now while they're young, and then I can finish finish my last, year of midwifery school when the baby's a little bit older. So now I'm like, I
Yeah.
had to shift my mindset. Like, I really want to be a midwife. Of course I do. I want to finish my last year of school, but I also want to spend the time with my kids, and,
Yeah.
learn with them and stuff. And so, I decided to kind of shift over to that. So now my main focus is the homeschooling the kids and my business.
Yeah, no, that makes
Yeah.
total sense because that was one of
Yeah.
the things that I had to think about as well when I withdrew from midwifery school because
Yeah.
when COVID hit, it was like impossible to balance like life and
Yep.
clinic and
Yep.
births and school.
Yep.
And so I was definitely like, birth will always be there.
Exactly.
And if whenever I decide to go back, I will, and I'll still be just as passionate, if not more passionate about it after watching my kids grow more and
Exactly.
watching other
Exactly.
people have babies around me. So, yeah, I'm excited to one day be back in that space, but right now it's just not realistic.
No, yep, exactly. I know exactly what I
Yeah.
know exactly how you feel. I was the same. I was so sad. I was like, when I talked to them, I was like crying when I was telling them, I wasn't going to be able to come back for the next semester after I had the baby. And they're like, we will always be here. Don't worry about
Mhm.
it. Just do what you have to do with your
Mhm.
kids. And they made me feel so good about it. So I was like, you know
Good.
what?
Yeah.
They'll always be there. My kids aren't always going to be small, And I
Right.
talked to another woman who was older in my cohort in midwifery school. And she said, I wanted to be a midwife my entire life. And I didn't start midwifery school until I was 45 because I waited
Mhm.
until all of my kids were grown and out of school. And then I started, did my dream of becoming a midwife. And now I have, now that I have all this free time, now that my kids are gone, I fill it up with midwifery school. I'm like, oh yeah, what am I going to do when when my kids are
Right.
grown and they're gone, So I'm like, oh, I can do that when everybody's bigger, it'll
Mhm.
always be there. People are always gonna have babies, So it's not like
Exactly.
something I
Exactly.
can't come back to later, So, and
Right.
I've
Right.
not like I've completely stopped attending births. I've attended, family members' births to support things
Mhm.
like that. And past clients who really said, I do not want to have a baby without you as my doula. I'm like, I can come to
Mhm.
your birth. I can't do a lot of prenatal stuff. We can talk on the phone, and it's totally worked out. So, I was able to be there for, past clients who turned into friends for their births while
Mhm.
also not like sacrificing a ton of time. So
That's
it's been a
beautiful.
balance. Yeah.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that answers the question of if you've attended births prior to your own. Were you a
Yeah, I
doula or
have.
birth worker before you had Maddie?
No, I was not at all. I was actually I was actually in my second year of early childhood education to be a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Still with
wanted to be.
kids, you know?
I know, yeah. I wanted exactly that kind of goes into my homeschooling. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And in high school, I got really into sign language. My mom, as a child, she worked at a company that found jobs for disabled adults. So in
Mm.
that, she had to learn sign language because she's worked with a lot of deaf and nonverbal people. So we knew sign language, like basic sign language as kids, and then kind of what you call like baby sign language. We were taught like our siblings and stuff when we were younger, and then as we got older, to be able to communicate with my mom's clients. And then in high school, they offered ASL. So it's my foreign language is like, oh, I'll do that because I already know ASL. So I was like a geek. I was like the president of the ASL club. I started the ASL club. I was just super into it. I absolutely loved my ASL teacher. She was super inspiring. And I actually followed her path, that same path that she followed to become an ASL teacher, high school teacher. And that's what I wanted to do. So after I got pregnant with Maddie, my second year of that, and did not like my birth experience in the hospital. It was super traumatic. And James and I talked about it. And we knew we wanted to have more kids, but we both never wanted to do that again.
Yeah,
So
so let's
my
dive into
mom,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 18, at the time.
Mhm.
I think no, I had just turned 19 when I found out I was pregnant with her. And was super young, didn't know very much. My mom had my brother in a birth center with a midwife that
Mhm.
also tended home births, but we were, in an apartment when I was younger, and my mom wasn't able to have the baby there. So she decided, we'll go to a birth center with a midwife. It was amazing. I loved the whole experience. When I got pregnant with Maddie, I was like, oh, I'll do that. Called around to birth centers and home birth midwives back then, and none of them took me because at the
Mm.
time I had state insurance, and
Mm.
uh, they either did not cover midwifery or the midwives had met their, per capita of how many births they're allowed to, or how many,
Right.
Melina births they wanted to attend. So was basically had to go to the hospital. So ended up having her at Good Sam in Puyallup, Good Samaritan Hospital, and was not a great experience. From the beginning, when I was pregnant with her, I knew that I did not want to vaccinate, and I had the same pediatrician my whole childhood. So I made an appointment when I was pregnant with her with my childhood pediatrician, and it said, hey, what do I do if I do not want to do this? We'd done a lot of research, and I said, how does it work like in the hospital? I was 18. I was super young. Like I didn't really know anything. So she said, you know what? I already know they're going to give you a lot. They're going to give you a hard time in the hospital if you go in there and say you don't want to do this. So she gave me some literature. I read over a ton. She was so helpful. And she said, one thing I'll do is I will write you this letter and you take it to the hospital and you say, this baby will be seen, by this pediatrician, by my pediatrician within a week of birth. Babies always have their, check-in. And, she will be seen by her, and all of her, vaccinations and stuff will be overseen by this pediatrician. She wrote me out this letter. I kept it with me, took it to the hospital with me. When I was there, they were telling me about what was going to happen, postpartum and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, no, after we don't want to do shots. And just the looks on their faces changed. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't like being challenged. They don't like resistance. They don't like being questioned. So that immediately to them was like hostility towards them, rather than seeing a mother trying to make decisions, informed decisions for her own baby. It was, you're going against what we're saying. So after that, it was kind of just not a good time. A lot of bullying by the hospital staff, a lot of just a bit bad negative experience. They were talking to me, not only to me, but to James as well. They were, asking me if I was forced to do this, if he was forcing me, if there's any, they removed him from the room. They asked to go talk to him outside, and he went outside and he was gone for hours. I was lucky. And is my
this
mom
during labor?
Yeah, this was all, it was in the middle of labor, actively having contractions. I was lucky my mom showed up not long before that. And so she was with me while he was in the hallway with them. And they were asked me, how do you know him? Are you guys in a relationship? How old are you? How old is he? Is he forcing you to do this? It was so weird. And my mom was staying there and she's like, what? We were just looking at each other, what's happening? They asked for my ID. They wanted to see my ID. They asked why him and I didn't have the same last name. I was like, we're not married. It's 2012. Right. People have babies without being married, because they had taken I didn't know, but they had taken his ID in the hallway. They wanted to know why we didn't have the same last name, who the last name the baby's going to have. Just after this was the first birth experience I ever had. I never saw anybody before this give birth in a hospital. And then, since then I realized this is not normal. I've been to tons of births after that. Then I realized that was not normal. All the things they were asking me, and asking where my parents were. I was like, this is my mother standing next to me. They didn't believe she was my mom because she was white. She was white. And they said, oh, this is your mother. I said, yeah, that's my mom. They asked for her ID.
And so just for the listeners, Blaine is a brown, beautiful woman. So
I'm very, very obviously Black.
Yeah.
So my mom, I'm mixed. So my mom's white. I don't look like her very much. We kind of have the same face. Not really. If you didn't know, if you walked into a room, you wouldn't think we were related. So we got this my whole childhood. So they did not believe she's my mother. She gave them her ID. We have the same last name. They saw that we were, we were related. Very, very bizarre. I didn't find out until after the baby was born. While they had James in the hallway, they had hospital security out there interviewing him about how he knew me, our relationship, if he was pressuring me into not vaccinating, if he was asking him, if it was my decision to not want an epidural or to not want to vaccinate. It was so bizarre. They came back in. I just felt so gross about the whole thing. I was crying. And in between all this, maybe every few minutes, a nurse was coming in and asking me if I wanted an epidural. Constantly telling me I was being too loud, There were other
Oh,
mothers on
no.
the floor, and I was being too loud, and I was traumatizing the other mothers how loud I was being while I was in labor. But I was not screaming. Like, I have videos. My mom and I had my best friend was there as well. She was taking videos. We all had like pictures and videos. I was not screaming. Like, you've been to births, the sounds people make. I was making
Yeah.
normal labor sounds. It was very weird. And every time they came in, I was having a contraction. And while somebody's having a contraction, you don't speak. You're quiet. You let them work through it. Give them
Mm-hmm.
support. You're not asking them things unless it's maybe an emergency. Every time I
Mm-hmm.
had a contraction, they came in and asked me if I wanted to get an epidural, and then they would leave. And so I don't have a chance to in between while I'm kind of more coherent to say, please stop asking me while I'm having a
Right.
contraction. So I told James, if she comes in the next time I have a contraction, tell her not to ask me. Like, when she comes in, just tell
Mm-hmm.
her like this, like, say, stop. I want silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept, like, my family in the room already knew I'd been in labor for a day to please
Mm-hmm.
stop talking while I'm having a contraction. She kept coming in, and that's after he had finally told her, please stop asking her while she's having contractions. It's like, for an epidural, it's very distracting. It's kind of like throwing her off the rhythm she's trying to get into. And then that's when they called in security, because they
Oh,
felt
wow.
threatened by him telling me that. And they asked,
And
do I?
also, I think it's good for the audience and listeners to also know that James is also a black
Oh
man.
yeah, sorry. He's also very
So,
black.
yeah.
He's very black as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the language that was being used. Was the nurse said she felt threatened by him
Mm-mm-mm.
asking them to stop asking me while I'm having a contraction if I want an epidural. And then he was taken out into the hallway and questions and all these things. And then after that, they were just more hostile, telling me I need to be quiet, like threatening me if I don't be quiet, they're taking me in for a C-section. And I said, well,
Oh.
I was like, you can't take me in just because I'm being loud. Like, if something's wrong with the baby, she's like, oh, so you don't want a C-section either? You don't want an epidural or a C-section? I said, well, if something's wrong with the baby, I'll get a C-section. And she said, well, we can find something wrong with your baby to get a C-section. Basically telling me if
Oh
I if
my
I don't be quiet,
gosh.
they'll basically make up a reason that I need to get a C-section. The whole thing was just so, traumatizing to a young person who's never had a baby before. So if you can
Yes.
imagine, this is why I found okay, discovered home birth. So just a
Yeah.
lot of things were happening. I was there for over 2 days. uh Kept asking them to call my doctor, please call him, please call him. Finally, the nurse was like at my bedside, and I screamed. I was like, call him. Like, I just really, I hadn't seen him the whole time. And it was just very, like, to me, like, he was with me my whole pregnancy. Like, I wanted him there, obviously, right, while I was giving birth.
Mm-hmm.
So she called him in the room with me, and she said, he has to be in at 7 a.m. for a meeting. So he'll just come and see you when he comes in. And it was like 4 in the morning. And I'd already been in labor for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Maddie was born at 7:01, so he wasn't even there for a birth. He missed it.
Oh.
A doctor I didn't even know came in. I had been yelling that I'm pushing, and they're telling me I can't because the doctor's not there yet. I finally was like, just, I'm pushing, I'm screaming. We have pictures, and my mom on one side and James on one side, and my mom's in my ear, and she's like, push, just push. My mom's had 4 kids. She's like, just push.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to push, do not hold it. I was like, okay, I'm pushing. A doctor I've never seen before, a woman walks in, doesn't say a word to me. She just sits down, gets gloves on, and immediately gives me an episiotomy. And I started screaming. And I was like, why does it hurt?
No.
Like, she sat down and was like, why is it hurting so bad? And my mom looked down and she was like, just keep pushing, just keep pushing. Don't, like, she didn't want to tell
Oh.
me. And then after she told
Yeah.
me, they had given me an episiotomy. She had just immediately walked in, gave me an episiotomy, because she probably had other patients, or just was
Oh,
wanted to hurry it up.
Blaine.
She was obviously just called in quickly, just there's a woman in labor, Dr. Edstrom's not here, come in. So she came in, and then left. One thing I found out was, oh no, she waited till the placenta was delivered. So one thing I found out after was the baby was delivered, and I was young enough to know that the placenta had to come out. So the baby was delivered, and then I saw a nurse bring over a tray, to start doing sutures. And she started suturing, and then she said, oh wait, no, here comes the placenta. She had already started suturing me before my episiotomy, before the placenta came out. I
Oh my
like, you
gosh.
can't make this up. The placenta's delivered while I'm screaming because she had already started suturing me. And then later, like, I was telling the story to the midwife I worked for. She was like, her face the whole time was like, you're kidding me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah,
Just in
I didn't know.
shock.
I wasn't young enough to know. My mom, like, we were taught the doctors, everything. You don't question a doctor. If a doctor's doing something, you be quiet and let them do
Right.
what they're doing. They're working. So they were taught that they're an authority figure. And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, they're, sorry, I don't see doctors as like authority figures anymore, especially after doing all the births I did in hospitals, working as a doula and things. I'm like, yeah. So, my
Yeah.
birth experience kind of cemented a lot of that, my birth experience with Maddie. And it was very scary. The placenta was delivered normally, got my sutures, the doctor left. I honestly don't think she said anything to me the whole time.
Mm.
Um, and then we were whisked off to a postpartum room, and that's when my doctor showed up and basically
Oh,
walked in and said, "Do you want ibuprofen?" I was like, "No, I'm good." And then he turned around and left. Didn't see him the rest of the time I was there. Yeah,
what an
it was
experience. Like
it
for
was
the
so
first
bad.
time.
Yeah. And on the way home from the
Oh
hospital, I was
God.
bawling, crying the whole way home. I was crying, and James was like, that was terrible. Like, obviously we don't ever have to, like, we're not doing that ever again. I was like, I'm never going back having a baby in the hospital.
Oh my
And then a few
gosh.
days like later, when our family and stuff were visiting, somebody had made a joke. I don't know if it was my mom or his mom. I don't. It was obviously wasn't my mom, because she knew the experience was terrible. Like, somebody in our family was like, when are you working on number two? I'm like, this is a newborn baby. We're not
Yeah.
anytime soon. But then he
And we're
left.
traumatized.
Yeah. And then he's like, that sucks, because I kind of do want to have more kids, but we can't ever do that again. So then I like, after that, I was talking to my mom about midwifery, and like about how she used her midwife. And then I went to that woman's website and kind of started reading and saw
Mm.
her like certifications and things, looked those up, and I was like, oh, this is like, I could be a CPM, like people
Mm-hmm.
do this. So that kind of led me on to my path of midwifery. Not long after that, I saw the prerequisites for to become a doula. I had never even heard of a doula. If I
Mm-hmm.
had, I would have gotten one for my birth.
Right.
So I just thought having my best friend, my mom, there were enough. Well, my mom had 4 babies in the hospital, and she wasn't awake for a few of them. And then my
Mm-hmm.
best friend obviously was also another 18-year-old girl who didn't know anything about birth. So and James, his only other birth experience, he had a son when we met, and had
Mm-hmm.
a very traumatic hospital birth experience himself.
Mm.
And so after that, he had had two birth experiences. That's why after that, he was like, I don't ever want to do that again. Jamer's birth was, really traumatic. Your birth was, he's like, I'm never going to be at another hospital birth. After he was questioned, he, like, on the way home, he's like, I thought they were going to arrest me. Like, they said, we'll call the police. I was like, oh my God. Like, it was just scary. So,
Mm.
he's like, I'm not doing that again. Like, what happens if I get arrested next time while you're in labor? Like, it was just really scary.
Right.
So after that, we looked into it. I became a doula, did, hospital doula births, home doula births. Um, I started midwifery school, started working with a midwife, and then while I'm kind of towards my last year with her, she was going to start taking a break from midwifery the next year, and I found out I was
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. So
Mm.
I worked with her from January to December, and then in January, she took a gap from midwifery, took half a year off, and then I took off to have Maddie. So it was like
Mm.
perfect timing. We worked together for each of our last years
Mm-hmm.
in midwifery, and then it was a lot of fun. So, and that year, I think I was at like between 10 and 15 birds a month. Like, it was a crazy year. I
Ooh.
can't even remember most things of 2017. I can hardly remember,
Oh
because
gosh.
before that, I think I was a doula before that for 2 years, and then was still a doula and working with a midwife for the third year. It was
Yeah.
insane. I worked for Open Arms Perinatal Services, the volunteer doula service, where they
Yep.
pay for doulas for low income families, and
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a year and a half, and it was amazing. So I was attending those births while working with a midwife, and uh, I was taking maybe 10, maybe 8 to 10 births from Open Arms, and then the midwife would have anywhere from 8 to 10 births a month that I was also attending. So it was a crazy time. And then I found out I was pregnant
Goodness.
towards the end, and I was like, I'm just gonna take a break. I can't do this with 3 kids. At the time, I was only three.
Mm-hmm.
So with her, obviously, I'd been working, births for years, seen hundreds of births in those 3 years.
Mm.
So I decided, with this one, I'm obviously going to do a home birth, but I decided I'm just going to be crazy and go unassisted. So for my third baby for
Oh,
Abby, or
wow.
for my
Yeah.
second baby for Abby, we decided we're not gonna have anybody there. Like the first experience for mine was so overwhelming and overstimulating, and there were so many people coming in and out. You between my family coming in and out, and doctors and nurses and people I didn't know. Like my baby was delivered by somebody I hadn't even met before, you know. So this time we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna go complete opposite, and nobody's gonna be there. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had seen enough birds, had enough experiences. I was inspired by so many women in those years, like seeing just how hard and traumatic and like how hard they worked for their babies. I was like, I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this at home. We'll be good. So Abby, my second baby, was born at home with just James and I. And right before she was born, I looked up as I was pushing her out. I looked up and Maddie, she was 5 by this time. Maddie had walked in and she was standing there watching, and I was like, "Come in!" So Maddie came in, and Abby was delivered, and it was just the three of us in the room. It was awesome.
That's
In the
so
middle of the
awesome.
night, like it was amazing. So that I think seeing all those birds really inspired me. Like I could do this. Like the first time I thought I could do it, I thought, well, hundreds and thousands and millions of women have given birth. Like I'll be good just going in with no education at all, you know? So,
Yeah.
but after that, after having the years of, it'd been 5 years since Maddie was born. I'd had 5 years to learn. I'd been in school for, I'd been in school. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
taking doula trainings and seeing so many births that I knew that I could do it. So,
Were
that
there
was, that
any
was kind of cool.
complications at all with that birth at
Yeah,
all? Or
so
was
we
it?
did have her. So we had her at home, had a free birth. She was born perfectly healthy. My labor was less than 3 hours. I at the time the midwife that had been working for her, she had had three free births, and she told me
Mm-hmm.
if anything goes wrong, just call me. So Abby was born. I immediately took a placenta tincture after placenta to help my placenta release. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm.
It'd been 30 minutes. My placenta still wasn't out. So I text her and she said, let me know if it's not out in another 10 minutes and I'll come over. 10 minutes went by, no placenta. She comes
Mm.
over. Abby had been born at this time, was awesome. She was playing. We were trying to nurse her, she was hanging out with
Right.
James. I started nursing her to try to get it to release. Still didn't release. She did a manual sweep to try to get it out, still didn't want to come out. So we transferred to
Ooh.
the hospital, and they said, as soon as I got there, they were like, are you okay with us giving you, we're going to have to give you, a muscle relaxer. We're going to have to give you something to try to Pitocin. She had already given me Pitocin when she got there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she got there, gave me Pitocin, did a sweep, nothing. So she told them how much Pitocin she had given me. They're like, well, you're only allowed to have a little bit more. If it doesn't work, we'll have to give you a muscle relaxer. So we get to the hospital, and they said, oh, let's just give her a muscle relaxer, see what happens. They gave it to me, and within 5 minutes, it just came out on its own. When it
Oh
came out,
gosh.
so we weren't. I don't even think we were at the hospital for 20 minutes before I was already transferred
Mm-hmm.
to a postpartum room, because it just happened so quick in the ER, basically. So
Right.
we got there. They gave me a muscle relaxer. It just came right out, and my placenta, instead of being round, was three separate pieces. So I had an
Oh.
abnormal placenta and did not
Yeah.
know it was. They call it a trilobed placenta. So it was in three. It almost looked like a clover. It was in three individual pieces. So throughout my pregnancy, it didn't cause any problems for me or her. But with delivery, it obviously didn't detach normally because it wasn't like a nice round shape to just come away. It had pieces, in weird places. So
Mm-hmm.
they were able to determine that it came out whole and everything was good. And so we transferred to a postpartum room, and we're gone in a few hours. It was
Nice.
they were there when I needed them, but I was with my birth experience last time, it was the labor that was the most traumatizing to me, was being not being in control of my own labor and being at the behest of other people while I'm having my
Mm-hmm.
baby was very traumatizing to me. So I feel like even though I did have to transfer, I got to labor by myself. I got to labor with James. We had, very redeeming birth. Me redeeming Maddie's birth, his first, Maddie and James's birth. He was the first one to see his baby, the first one to grab her and talk to her. Like, it was so amazing. He's the one who named her. It was kind of crazy. We didn't have a name because
Mm.
we didn't know if she was a boy or a girl. So we kind of had lists. We would like text each other names back and forth and made a list like boy names and girl names, and we're kind of like, we'll just see when they come out. And it was so weird. Like she was born and he picked her up and he said, "Hi, Abigail." I was like, "Abigail?" What?
Oh.
And then he was like, "Did I just call her Abigail?" I was like, "Yeah, you did." He's like, "That's so weird." And I went through my list in our text and that was not on any of them. He was like, "It was so weird when I saw her. I just saw the name Abigail." I was like, "Okay, cool. Let's do it."
There it
So
is. There's
it was
Abigail.
so weird. Yeah, it was really amazing. So I feel like that birth was super redeeming for both of us. So even though we had to transfer, the hospital staff was amazing. Everybody was awesome. My midwife, my preceptor transferred with us. She hung out with us for a while until made sure everything was good. She ordered us dinner the next night.
Oh,
So it was really
nice.
amazing. Yeah, it was super great. Um,
Was it a different hospital that you transferred to this time?
yes, yes. So the first time I was in Puyallup, we live in Federal Way now. So I went to Franciscan Hospital in Federal Way, and they were
Mm,
amazing. And I have done um, births there since Abby was born, and there
mm,
I saw a lot of the same staff, and they're super great. I really enjoyed that hospital. But as a doula, towards the end, I stopped attending hospital births
mm.
because I had a lot of very traumatic hospital experiences with clients. I had actually I'd tell open arms, "I don't want to do hospital births at this hospital." And then it moved to, "Well, I'm not doing this hospital either." And then it moved to, "I'm not doing any hospital births. So please only refer me to birth centers or like, give me birth center or home birth clients because I cannot work in hospitals anymore." So
Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of racist, homophobic hospitals in Seattle that
Which
after
is so
seeing
unfortunate, man.
my clients go through things, black clients, queer clients go through things, I won't do it anymore. I won't. I know it happens. It's very
Hmm.
sad. I wish I could support those people, but for myself, I can't put myself through that anymore. And I know that they
Hmm.
will find good doulas that can help them, or if
Right.
I can't be around it anymore. I can't watch people like suffer and my clients suffer in the hospital anymore. It was too bad. After
Yeah.
leaving a birth and literally having a breakdown in the parking lot, I said I can never watch somebody go through that again. So, and
Yeah.
I felt kind of selfish, like, okay, well, I'm leaving people like they're not going to have support, but there are doulas that can do that. And it was just
Right.
for me and my mental health and my family. I'm like, I can't see hospital births anymore. And
Hmm.
every time it would just bring back those feelings with Maddie, and I just knew what my clients were feeling. Like I've been through it. I know that they're suffering, and it was so hard for me to watch that. Like
Yeah.
watching myself go through it over and over. I'm like, I can't. No, sorry. I can only do home
Hmm.
births, from now on. And after switching that, my mindset about birth changed. It became more positive, like a lot more positive for me after not seeing hospital births anymore, and to
Hmm.
where I still had, even after having a free birth hospital transfer, I still had my next two babies at home. Just
Nice.
because I still felt, still felt that it was safer, honestly,
Yeah.
and better for
Yeah.
my mental health.
Were your next two, because it's Miles and
Yes,
Theo, right?
yes.
Okay,
So my
so
next
were
two,
both
yes.
of them free births or were they
No. So
okay?
I got pregnant with Miles when Abby was 8 months old. So
I
she
remember
was
coming
going to,
over and being like, "Hey,
yeah,
how are things going?" And da da da, and you're like, "So,
yeah.
I'm pregnant."
Pretty soon, yeah. It was really close. It was really close after. So, yeah, she was barely 18 months when he was born. So she was practically still a baby herself and very still like, we were a homeschool family. Like we're home all the time, we're always together. So I knew obviously going to a birth center wasn't an option, like being away from her. So, and also James wouldn't be able to be with me, if he's with Abby. So we decided
Mhm.
to hire a midwife and a doula for that birth. So I went with my midwife, amazing, beautiful Somali midwife named Faiza. She's local,
I love
has an
Faisa.
office here in Federal Way. I absolutely love her to death. She was my midwife for Miles. I saw her my whole pregnancy with him, and she delivered him here. And it was a great experience. Their practice actually offered free doula and postpartum doulas. So I was given a doula with them that I knew, an amazing, beautiful person named Kirsten. So she was my doula for my birth with Miles, and that experience was great as well. A very very quick home birth, very uneventful pregnancy, uneventful
Hmm.
labor, uneventful birth. It was what you would dream of for a home birth. So it was awesome. It
Yeah.
was really great. So
Awesome.
James was able to be with the kids, hang out because it ended up being during the day. I was kind of hoping it'd be at night, so at least if Abby was sleeping, he could be with us. But I went into labor at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and actually had an appointment with her that day. I was 42 weeks. I was overdue, way overdue. I was the same with Abby. I was 42 weeks with her too for my free birth. So she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come check on you because if this baby's not born today, we got to get it rolling." So she came over at 1, and maybe about 10 minutes before she got there, it started having contractions. So she just stayed, and he was born at 5 o'clock that
Wow.
afternoon. So it was pretty quick. The doula got there just in time. She got there about 2 hours before he was born. So I kind of had like a nice labor. James's job is super flexible, so he was at work. And as soon as Faiza got there and realized this in labor, she's like, "No, you're kind of going fast. You should call him home." So he was home within
Mhm.
10 minutes. He hung out with the kids, took them outside, like, so I could labor. I didn't want to I didn't want to scare them with any sounds, so Abby was little. So they played
Mhm.
outside, and then they came back inside once it started getting close. They called him in, and he set the kids up with pizza downstairs, and he ran
Nice.
upstairs, and he was there for the last 20 minutes of Miles being born. Like, basically, when I started pushing, they're like, "Hey, call James inside." So he came inside, and the kids were downstairs chilling, and he was there with Miles. I was leaning on him. It was really great. So he got to see him born and announced that he was a boy. We didn't know either. And then
Mhm.
he came up, and after everybody was all cleaned up and under blankets and everything was cleaned up, we got the kids up, and it was really nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a great birth with him too.
Oh, great. Did
So
you have any complications postpartum with him at all with your placenta
no,
since that last
actually,
time?
I was slightly anemic. With
Mhm.
him, also with Abby, I did with the retained placenta, did hemorrhage a little bit, and with the
Mhm.
pitocin not working, I had told Faiza about the experience. She knew that she was immediately going to give me pitocin. I'm not a super huge fan of it. I'd rather not hemorrhage though. So
Right.
I said, as long as the baby's out, I'm good with you giving me pitocin. I don't
Mhm.
care if I have it. So after he
Right.
was delivered, she immediately gave me pitocin because she was worried about a hemorrhage, and I did have a mild hemorrhage. So I was low on iron after I was slightly anemic, and I just took iron supplements, ate a lot. I stayed in bed. She wanted me to stay in bed for a few days. So I stayed in bed, and he was bringing me steaks and broccoli and kale and
Yes.
burgers and all the fat and carbs and all the folate and iron and vegetables, and I
Right.
was eating a salad twice a day, and just trying to keep my iron up. And I was in bed for a few days. I didn't go downstairs, I don't think, for a week. Same with
Perfect.
Abby. I was,
Yeah.
since the hemorrhage after her, I stayed in bed for over a week with her. Just got all the food brought to me, and it was amazing.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I highly advocate for that postpartum. Stay in bed as long as you possibly can, and after
Oh,
that, do
yeah.
very little and eat a
Yep.
lot, a lot, a
Yes.
lot. So
Yeah.
my only complication was that I was anemic, and I kind of caught on when I was like really obsessing over ice. Like, I was chewing my ice
Mm.
constantly. Like, James was bringing me my postpartum tea. I made myself a big batch of tea. The day that I went into labor, and so he was bringing me my tea for postpartum, and I was eating the ice, and he every time he came up, he's like, "Your ice is already melted." I was like, "No, I ate it." He's like, "Yeah, I think you're anemic." I was like, "Maybe I
Yep.
am." So yeah, so
Mhm.
that's how we kind of knew that I needed some extra iron, and Pfizer ran my iron, and she was like, "Yeah, you need to start supplementing and eat more vegetables."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
other than that, no major complications. And then I didn't get pregnant again for 2 years after that with Theo. He is
Mhm.
8 months now. He was born last June. And same thing, very uneventful pregnancy, no major complications, no complications during labor at home, except no major complications. My water did break, and I didn't go into labor for over a day after that. That's never
Mhm.
happened to me. With all three of the previous ones, my water broke like while I was pushing. None of my waters
Got it.
broke prematurely. None of them broke while I was in labor. They always broke while I was pushing. And actually, while I was pushing with Miles, FISA broke my water because to get things moving.
Mhm.
I was pushing and having a lot of he was going back in a lot. She's like, "Your waters are bulging. If I pop them, he'll come right out." She broke my water, and it was instant. Like, oh, pretty
Mm.
instant. I think she looked and she said, I'm breaking her water at 4:58. Her assistant charted it, and then he was born at 5 o'clock. So
See?
if
Yep.
she had broke my water, but if she had broke it before, if I'd let her, I was trying to hold out, but
Right.
yeah. But with Theo, my water broke on Monday morning. Actually, funny story. I woke up at like 4 a.m. to my chickens screaming outside because I have chickens, and
Mm-hmm.
James and I both got up and rushed outside, and there was a huge possum had dug its way into our chicken coop,
Oh
and we
no.
scared it off and came back inside, and we walked back in the door, and just like it was like a movie, just everywhere.
Gush
Oh, he's
everywhere.
like, I hope that was your water. I was like, yes. So, Fiza came over when she woke up that morning and checked me. And then that was on Monday morning. And I didn't have him until Tuesday at 9 o'clock at night. So my water
Mm.
was broken for over 24 hours. We were right about to go to the hospital. At home birth, she said, Shadvi said to remind me, I know you're not supposed
Mm-hmm.
to have your water broken for too long, it can increase the risk of infection, but I really did not want to go to the hospital. So she said, if you're not in labor by 2 o'clock, that's 25 hours. We have to go to the hospital. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that hour I was trying everything I could to make myself go into labor. And at it was about 1:45. I started having contractions. I was like, please, let's just stay. Let's see if
Yeah.
they pick up. And they had picked up
Yeah.
pretty intensely
Mm-hmm.
within the next 30 minutes. So we decided to stay. And then he was born at 9. So she'd also
Nice.
given me a time limit. Your
Right.
water has
Right.
been broken. I mean, even though you're in labor, if he's not born by a certain time, we should probably go in. And his heart rate sounded great the whole time. Our vitals were good, so she was okay with us staying at home. And then she stayed a little bit longer after he was born. With Miles, she stayed, I think, maybe 3-4 hours. With Theo, she was there almost 5 hours, just because my water was broken for so long. She wanted to monitor us and make sure he was okay. And he was totally
Right.
great. He was fine.
That's
No
awesome.
complications. He was born with extra pinkies, which is super
Really?
weird. Yeah, it was not picked up on
Cool.
the ultrasound because there was no bone. It was not picked up on ultrasound. It
Mm.
was so weird. They say it's genetic.
So
But
who
neither of
has
us
an extra pinky?
exactly. We called like our oldest relatives on everybody's family, and nobody knew of it happening in our family. So it was just random. He got the random genes and had
Nice.
two
Yeah.
little tiny extra pinkies. And
Nice.
but other than that, he's great.
Nice. So
Yeah.
does he still have those pinkies?
No, we had them removed.
Oh.
They were really tiny, and there was no bone in them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just skin. And I
Mm-hmm.
was really worried about them getting caught on things,
Snagged. Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
doctor said the same thing. She said, You could just leave them, but I will warn you, they do get ripped off and caught on things. So
Oh.
we were worried about that happening and, causing greater injury. So
Right.
they just put a little surgical staple on it, and it fell off in a few days. So
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah, so
Kind of
it's
like
super
what they do
simple.
for hemorrhoids,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
just
Yep.
kills it over time. Yeah.
Yep. It only took a week for them to fall off, and
Nice.
it was super normal, and I never heard of it happening. And I had posted about it like on my Facebook, like, here, he's perfect except his little, he's
His
got his
little
little extra
pinkies.
pinkies. They're so cute. And a friend of mine that I went to high school with had sent me a message, and she said, "Hey, remember I was pregnant at the same time as you?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, he was born 3 days before your baby, and he has the same thing." And she sent me a picture.
Wow.
They looked identical. I was like,
Wow.
what? It was so bizarre. I was like, wait, is it in your family? She's like, no, it's not in my family at all. We had never
Mm-hmm.
ever heard of it. And he randomly had it. And we both had him removed at the same time because they were only a few days apart. But I thought that was so bizarre that
That is
like
so
one of
bizarre.
like somebody that I had went to school with, we talk occasionally. I think we've had like a play date or two. But like,
Mm-hmm.
how random is that we got pregnant at the same time and had babies days apart, and they had the same polydactyl fingers. I was just super
Yeah.
weird. Like it could have been any
Wow.
finger, or
Right.
toes, but it was the same pinkies. It was super bizarre, but yeah, apparently it
Yeah.
happens. The midwife, she's the one who noticed it when he was born. Um, and she didn't say anything. We didn't know till about a few minutes later when she was wrapping him up for James to hold while she was doing my placenta. And he was like, "Let's count your fingers and toes." And she said, "Oh, you're going to be surprised." And I was like, "Why?" And he pulled his hand out. He was like, "What?" It was crazy. And she said that she had seen it before.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
yeah, and I had
something
never
that,
seen it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's
Yeah.
something
It
that
was
would not be seen very often.
yeah.
especially like if it is ever caught during pregnancy, you know, I feel like if there's any slight difference in
Yeah.
pregnancy, especially with hospital births, they're going to be like, no, you need to stay at the hospital, you know? So
Yeah,
I feel like it's
exactly.
probably less likely for like an out of hospital midwife to see that,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
I think that's
Exactly. They
great.
see
Yeah.
less births, they obviously see less births at a hospital, but apparently it's that
Hmm.
common that she had seen it. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy. His birth was, completely uneventful, which is what you want in a home birth, a nice,
Yeah.
calm birth, no, just, nothing to go wrong. And he will definitely be my last. I say this after
Yeah.
everyone, but he will definitely be my last. But I would say
Yeah.
like that was a nice, wholesome way to round out my birth experiences. Every birth can't be perfect. I had my first one, but everyone I learned from and try to make the next one, better, more positive, flow smoother with having four kids at home, multiple toddlers at home while you're giving birth.
Right.
Which I feel like a lot of people I've talked to have gone to birth centers or hospitals are scared to give birth at home because of
Hmm.
complications or because they have small children in the house. But
Yeah.
I feel like introducing children to birth and like it's the most natural process,
I'm right there
from a
with
young
you. Yeah.
age is just
Hmm.
I feel like I don't want to say my kids are like more mature, but like they are able to like, talk about stuff like that, use anatomically correct,
Right.
words, they know where they
Absolutely.
don't say the stork delivered the baby. Like they know where babies come from. They've seen it,
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
I just,
100%. My kids are the same way.
making it as normal as possible, normalizing it as much as possible, that, you can do it. You can have babies at home. Like as a kid, I had
Right.
seen birth center. Like my mom had a birth at a birth center, so I knew other out of hospital experiences were possible. But
Hmm.
James did not. He did not think there was
Hmm.
any other way. That's why uh with his first wife and their birth experience in the hospital, very traumatic. She had a postpartum hemorrhage, and
Yeah.
they also did not want to vaccinate. And while
Hmm.
his wife was hemorrhaging and he was, with his wife, they gave their son vaccinations. And that with him was just the ultimate like
Oh.
betrayal of trust in a hospital,
Hmm.
that he was just so heartbroken. He had, been that was the normal for him. Like all he has a lot of siblings too and family, and they were all born in hospitals. And he was like super excited to have his son and go there. And he picked the best hospital. Like they drove to go to a nicer hospital, and like
Hmm.
and then that to have that happen, like it was just so, I feel like it was so traumatizing for him and his wife that they kind of both kind of, burned them a little bit, the medical industry. And then so when we
Yeah.
had our baby, he was like, I had him in a hospital, but I didn't really like it. But what else are we gonna do? He didn't know that there was another option. So then when we had Maddie, I'm like, whatever, we'll just go to, we'll go to this hospital. My mom had her babies here. Good Sam, we'll go there. And then that happened to us. And then after that, he's like, what do we do? What is our
Hmm.
option? But I feel like now our kids, my sons, can say, oh, I watched my little brother be born at home, and maybe like try
Hmm.
to, it can go on as something like that's natural. It shouldn't be seen as scary. Like all of my kids, born at home except for the older ones, like that's just normal for them. Like they saw all their siblings be born at home. So hopefully that
Hmm.
they're not, afraid when they're older, if they have no, major, health complications and the baby's healthy, that they'll see that home birth is an option. That hospital isn't the only option,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
just trying to
beautiful. I
normalize
love
it.
that. Yeah, like exposure
Thanks.
early on, you know, that's the
Yes.
same like path
Yes.
that I took with my kids because,
Yes.
you know, Kavina was there for Cairo's birth and Katana's. And I don't know if you know this, but she actually caught Katana at the birth
Oh
center.
my gosh,
So,
are you serious? Oh, that's so
yeah.
sweet.
And so she had that experience, and we talked about that. And, you know, she actually has her own episode. It's going to be the fourth episode of the podcast where she talks about her experiences. So
Oh,
it's
that's
going to
so
be
cute.
interesting.
I love
Yeah. Yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
So, if you could give any advice to any listeners that are pregnant on like labor and birth, like what would be one thing that you would say?
I would say just education. Read a lot. If
Mm-hmm.
you think you know something about birth, read into it even more because
Mm-hmm.
so many things can happen. Every single birth is different. I've had four kids, not one of them has been the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has been different. Everyone's had its own challenges. Everyone has had different levels of, you know, of I hate using the word pain, but honestly it was like at my
Mhm.
hospital birth, I felt like my contractions were harder and more intense than at my home births. And then, where I was in labor longer, those ones, the contractions towards the end were more intense. After having four
Mhm.
kids, my last labor, like the contractions came on a lot harder. And I thought I wasn't going to need, I won't need my TENS unit. I won't need as much support because I've already had three kids, but those contractions were stronger than any of my other kids' contractions. So I just,
Mhm.
reading a lot, I read so many birth stories, so many books. I've read every one of my pregnancies. I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I read
Mhm.
Spiritual Midwifery just because the stories are so inspiring.
Mhm.
I don't watch hospital birth videos. When I'm pregnant, I watch birth videos of home births
Mhm.
to give myself inspiration to say, look at her, she did that. I can do it. So that
Mhm.
way when you're in labor, you don't feel like every person I feel like in a point in labor feels like they want to give up. They say, I can't do it. I don't
Right.
want to do it. I'm done. And then for
Mhm.
me, I just drew on that like I can do it. There are women who had their like babies in cars. There are women who've had their babies
Mhm.
outside. There are women who've had their babies literally during war. If I can't have my baby in my nice warm room, I can do anything. So it just really gives you something to push through. And I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of that had to do with me reading and watching so many experiences and so many birth stories. And I have a whole bookshelf of birth books.
Mhm.
I read Unassisted Childbirth by Laura
Mhm.
Kaplan. Just all these things to give myself like inspiration, to give myself strength to draw through from when I'm in birth, whether you're in a hospital, what in a hospital or a home birth. My
Mhm.
friend recently had a baby in a hospital and she read the unassisted childbirth book that I was reading when I was pregnant. And she said, that gave me so much inspiration when I was in the hospital that, knowing this woman had her baby at home by herself. I'm in a hospital with the best medical care, like if anything
Mhm.
goes wrong, they can help me. So that kind of helped her. And then she said, you know what, the next one, I think I could do it at home. They didn't really do much for me at the hospital. I think I could do it at home. And just like, I feel like, the more that you can do to prepare,
Mhm.
the better your outcomes are going to be. I'm not going to say it's going to make every birth perfect because, like I said,
Right.
there's
Right.
always complications. Something can always happen. But I feel like I put like birth quotes and stuff on my wall and like pictures of pregnant women to like while I'm in labor and like pictures of my babies when they were my kids when they were babies, and I would look at them and be like, I just got to push this baby out. It's going to be so cute like her. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
anything to give yourself like inspiration and strength while you're pregnant. And
Mhm.
like I would listen to birth podcasts every night and things that like
Mhm.
just just to remind you that you're strong. Like every woman can, you can do it. Millions of women have done it before you.
Right.
So
Right.
just I feel like some women just like I did when I was 18. Oh, I'm going to go to the hospital. I don't need to know anything. I don't need to read any birth or parenting books. I'm going to go to the hospital and they'll tell me everything and they'll tell me what to do
Mhm.
and all this. And unfortunately, that's not the case for a lot of people. It doesn't work out like that. If I
Right.
had read all these books before I gave birth in a hospital, my experience would have been a lot different. If I
Right.
had done any of the preparation that I did with my other kids, my birth at the hospital would have been a lot different. So, whether you're birthing at home or in a hospital or a birth center, I just feel like education, books, classes, there's so many different childbirth classes and,
Yep.
childbirth educators and things, doulas. I mean, doulas provide so much education in pregnancy. I would
Mhm.
always advocate for everybody to get a doula, whether you're at home or hospital. They're so helpful. Yeah, just help
Yeah.
yourself during your pregnancy to give yourself a good birth.
Yeah, I 100%
Yeah.
agree with that. And just having the education, like you don't have to be a doula or a midwife to like reach out for
Yeah.
these resources. I will
Yep.
share these resources on your behalf to the audience.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I have Ina May's Guide to Childbirth,
Yes.
Spiritual Midwifery, and Unassisted
Yes.
Childbirth.
Yes.
Okay. I'll also share a
Yeah.
link to Open Arms,
Mm-hmm.
perinatal services.
Yes,
And I'll
please.
also, of course, like share FISA. FISA
They're
is
so
amazing.
amazing. Yes, and FISA,
Yeah.
amazing FISA. We have so many
Yeah.
amazing birth workers in this area.
I
Like
know. We're so
I don't.
fortunate.
Yes, we're so fortunate. I was so fortunate to have the experiences and worked with so many amazing midwives. Not just the preceptor I worked for, but I went to other births with her. Like she was backup for other midwives, and I met so many midwives in this area that just, I feel like we are so spoiled to have just
We
amazing,
are.
like so many amazing birth workers, from midwives to doulas to childbirth
Hmm.
educators to like prenatal yoga. We went to prenatal yoga together. Like
We
there's so
did,
many
yeah.
resources around here
Yeah.
that I feel like I was very, very lucky and fortunate to have so many good birth experiences.
Yeah. I will share
Yes.
Erica's link again too because that was
Thank
awesome.
you. Yes, she does a
Yeah.
lot of now childbirth education in
Hmm.
preparing families for childbirth. I would highly recommend her. I was just looking at her website. So amazing.
Yeah. 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 She
Yeah.
is absolutely amazing. And she is very
Yes.
queer friendly and very
Yes.
like just open to
Yes.
all things. I love Erica. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So thank you, Blaine. Thank you for
Yes,
sharing your
thank you.
stories with me and the
Thank you.
audience.
Sorry I
I
talked your ear off.
No, that's exactly what I need. Like that's amazing. I love it. I'm so excited to be sharing your stories.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yep, anytime.
Recording this episode with Blaine was a lot of fun, and I reached out to her post recording to confirm whether or not the Kristen that was her birth doula was my birth doula. And I was happy to hear that Kristen was both of our birth doulas. And so I'm finding this as the perfect opportunity to share Kristen's birth experience next week. So tune in next week to hear Kristen's personal pregnancy and birth experience with baby Beam. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Don't hesitate to share this with your family and friends. If you liked this episode, feel free to leave a review so my podcast can pop up for others and they can see and listen to it as well. If you have a birth story or experience you would want to share on the Birth As We Know It podcast, head over to KionaNessenbaum.com and fill out the guest request form. That is KionaNessenbaum.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.